Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Heather Grondin, Vice President of Communications and Stakeholder Relations with the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, and I'll be your moderator for today. I would like to welcome you to the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority's third annual public meeting. We are pleased to have so many representatives and members of the public from both sides of the border joining us this afternoon. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge a few dignitaries who we have with us today. MP Brian Massey has joined us. State Representative Stephanie Chang, City Councilor John Elliott, Norma Coleman from the Mayor of Windsor's office, a representative from MPP Lisa Gretzky's office, as well as Matt Marchand from the Windsor-Essex Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much. As a Canadian Crown Corporation, the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, or WDBA, is responsible to the public and is required to hold annual public meetings for the purpose of reporting on our financial statements and to solicit feedback from the public. This annual public meeting is focused on the 2016-17 fiscal year, and we'll be talking about that fiscal year and the progress that we made on the project during that time. Today's meeting is being webcast on our website, wdbridge.com, as well as being broadcast live on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Gordie Howe Bridge. We welcome all of the people who are joining us via webcast and Facebook today. Following today's presentations, we will be taking questions from the public who are here with us today, and we've also received a few questions in advance of today's meeting. You have received a question card when you came in today. We encourage you to fill out that question card during the presentations and during the Q&A session. When you filled out your card, please hold it up, and a member of WDBA staff will pick it up and bring it up to the front for us to be able to respond to that question. We will make every effort to answer every question asked today. If we run out of time or are not able to ask a question, we'll follow up with the person who asked the question, and all questions and answers will be posted on our website by the end of next week. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Dwight Duncan, the Chair of WDBA's Board of Directors.
Thank you, Heather, and good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue. It is a pleasure to be here today, and I would like to welcome our stakeholders who are with us this afternoon and those who are watching these proceedings on our webcast. We appreciate all of your interest in the Gordie Howe International Bridge Project. I want to preface my remarks today by bringing greetings on behalf of Prime Minister Trudeau, who wrote earlier today, I quote, "The Government of Canada remains strongly committed to the Gordie Howe International Bridge Project and looks forward to its continued moving forward." That commitment that the Prime Minister spoke of is evident in the government's steadfast support of the Bridge Authority as the Crown Corporation tasked with delivery of the project, and is evident through the progress the WDBA continues to make on moving the Gordie Howe International Bridge Project forward. Earlier this month, Minister Sohi announced that the Government of Canada has provided for an expansion of our board from 5 to a maximum of 9 members. This provides the organization with additional expertise and oversight to support the WDBA as we move towards completion of the procurement process and the start of construction of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. Yesterday, our new board members met with the existing board for the first time, and I'm proud to be part of a board that is comprised of committed and highly qualified individuals who want to make a difference and make a better Canada. I am pleased to welcome these talented individuals who, together with all of our board members, bring a diversity of talent and strong skills that reflect the complex and wide nature of the project. I'm going to name them, and I'm going to ask them to stand up while I introduce them. Carla Avis, Marie Campagna, Judy Cohen, Shelley Cunningham, Rish Malhotra, and Craig Ricks. And welcome to all of them. They bring there's lawyers, engineers, public procurement specialists, and Maria's a fellow Windsorite who joins the board. She is the CFO of Hotel Dieu Grace Hospital and is the chair of our audit committee. As you're aware, the WDBA's President and Chief Executive Officer has been on a leave of absence related to personal matters since August of this year. The Board of Directors has appointed André Junot as the WDBA's Chief Operating Officer to lead the organization during this critical time as we move forward towards the construction of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. Monsieur Junot previously sat on our Board of Directors and has now resigned from the board to assume his new responsibilities. Monsieur Junot has extensive experience and a stellar reputation in intergovernmental affairs and infrastructure delivery. Bienvenue, André. This is your first annual public meeting as Chief Operating Officer. André will be speaking to you in a few moments, but we're delighted that you are here, and we're very grateful for your being of such great assistance at this time. I would also like to introduce Ms. Linda Hurdle, the WDBA's Chief Financial Administrative Officer, who's at my left as well. Thank you, Linda, for all of your commitment to the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority and to the Gordie Howe International Bridge Project. WDBA's Board of Directors is responsible for overseeing the business activities and other affairs of the Crown Corporation. But perhaps the most important task of the Board of Directors is to steer the organization's strategy. We are in the midst of what is arguably the single most important task that the WDBA will undertake: the procurement process to select the private sector partner to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain the Gordie Howe International Bridge. The process is well underway. An estimated 2,000 people representing the three proponent teams are working as we speak on their submissions, which are due this coming May. We will announce the preferred proponent in June of 2018, reaching financial close in September 2018. In advance of the selection of our private sector partner, the WDBA is undertaking significant preparatory activities on both sides of the border. The WDBA has successfully moved ahead on its other 2016-17 strategic priorities, including preparatory activities at the Canadian and U.S. ports of entry, the relocation of over 25 kilometers of pipelines and cables. Last year at this time, we reported that 50% of the properties needed in Detroit were under Michigan's control and were vacated. I'm pleased to tell you today that more than 80% of the properties required for the U.S. project components are under the Michigan Department of Transportation's controls and are vacated. That number increases to 93% when you include properties which are under a court order to vacate. This achievement is a result of the strong commitment by Governor Snyder and our Michigan partners to acquire the needed properties in order to start significant construction of the bridge in 2018. Let me assure you that we will have every required property by the date needed. Our Chief Operating Officer will speak in more detail about our strategic priorities in his remarks. WDBA is taking steps and moving ahead on other fronts right now. We are awarding contracts and assigning roles to consultants to help us during the construction stage of the project. In short, we're getting ready for construction. We will be complete in a number of months, and we're now starting to transition to that construction, which will begin late June, early July. Our meetings with community leaders, agencies, and residents of Sandwich and Delray have resulted in over 200 ideas and suggestions of what they would like to see included in the community benefits. An example of a suggestion that we had heard overwhelmingly was the incorporation of a dedicated multi-use path that will accommodate pedestrians and cyclists. WDBA was able to take this feedback from public consultation and work with border agencies to make this a reality. I want to be clear that a community benefits plan is not just a requirement for the Gordie Howe International Bridge project, but community benefits is a top priority for the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. Importantly, we continue to build our relationship with local Indigenous peoples, including the Walpole Island First Nation, based on collaboration, mutual trust, and respect. We are also actively working with the mayors and staffs of the City of Windsor and Detroit. We appreciate their ongoing support and their dedication to help us continue to make progress. I would be remiss not to mention the recent ruling by the United States Courts of Appeal for the District of Columbia that reinforced the validity of the Canada-Michigan Crossing Agreement and served as yet another victory for the project through a long history of court challenges. As you will see, the theme of this year's annual report is momentum, which is particularly apt given the work that has been completed, is currently in progress, and is planned for the months ahead. The Board of Directors is committed to seeing, and I use the words of the Prime Minister Trudeau and President Trump in their joint statement, the expeditious completion of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. Their statement underscores the importance that both governments place on this project. The board's work has been made easier by the tremendous efforts, professionalism, dedication, and commitment demonstrated by the WDBA staff. I would also like to thank our partners, the Michigan Department of Transportation, Infrastructure Canada, the U.S. Federal Highway Administration, and the Michigan Governor's Office. Our partners are equally committed to this historic project, which will benefit communities on both sides of the border for many years to come. Together, the momentum grows. Construction will start in 2018, and the progress we're making has been significant. And I'll turn it back to Heather, and Monsieur Junot can speak a little bit more about the strategic priorities as we move from the procurement phase to the actual construction next year of our new bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Junot, I invite you to deliver your speaking points.
Thank you. Bon après-midi tout le monde. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank our chair, Dwight Duncan, and the entire WDBA Board of Directors for their support. Since becoming the Chief Operating Officer, I've spent much of my time, as you'd expect, in briefings and in meetings, and to get to know the people working on this historic project. I've also been reaching out to stakeholders and partners in Windsor and Detroit to get a better understanding of their concerns and of how the Gordie Howe International Bridge will impact them. And I will continue to do that, continue to meet including with people in this room. Collectively, what I'm finding is that our stakeholders and our partners are supportive of the project. They know that the new bridge will benefit businesses and communities on both sides of the border. Involving those who are affected by or have an interest in our project will result in more ideas on the table and, quite simply, a better project. That's why WDBA has applied considerable effort and resources in engaging with a diverse group of stakeholders. We'll continue this engagement throughout the procurement process, the construction phase, and during the operation of the bridge. As you know, I hope, our project is the most ambitious binational border infrastructure undertaking along the Canada-United States border. It's a mouthful, but it's true. It's a complex project and is made up of 4 key components: the Canadian port of entry, the bridge span itself, the U.S. port of entry, and the I-75 interchange. So I don't miss my page here. The WDBA has a team of talented, high-caliber employees who together are working to deliver these projects. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the executive team for their commitment and leadership. Martha Leardi-Anderson, Vice President, P3 Procurement. Heather Grondin, Vice President of Communications and Stakeholder Relations. Linda Hurdle, Chief Financial Administrative Officer. And Leslie Martin, who is right there, Executive Vice President of Engineering and Operations. And I also want to thank the entire WDBA staff for their expertise, for their dedication, and for the way they welcomed me when I went from being a board member to being the COO. Once built, the Gordie Howe International Bridge will be the only border crossing in Windsor, Detroit that has direct connections to the highway system in Canada and the interstate system in the US. I have found that on the Canadian side, we call this highway-to-highway connection. In the US, our colleagues say freeway-to-freeway. The WDBA has realized many successes over the last fiscal year as we deliver the project. That includes the issuance of the request for proposals to the 3 proponent teams, the announcement of a dedicated multi-use path for pedestrians and cyclists on the bridge, we like repeating that one, meeting and consulting with thousands of stakeholders and members of the public. We've also made significant progress in preparing the sites of the Canadian and U.S. ports of entry for the construction of the bridge and for the work to be done by our eventual private sector partner. On the Canadian side, preparatory activities have included completion of the Broadway drain, utility relocation, as has been mentioned, partial completion of the 4.4-kilometer perimeter access road, and the placement of more than 1 million tons of fill. In the U.S., work has included preliminary site investigation, surveying, demolition, utility relocation, and the acquisition of 346 land parcels. So we are poised to begin significant construction of the Gordie Howe International Bridge in the latter half of 2018. Over the last year, we've worked hard and we will continue our efforts to deliver the project, one which will literally change the landscape of the Windsor-Detroit region and will provide new economic opportunities in Canada and the United States. Individuals, businesses, trade unions, community groups, and governments on both sides of the border have endorsed the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. As you've heard from the Prime Minister through the Chair, the Government of Canada is committed to the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. Our job at WDBA is to deliver on the government's commitment, and that's exactly what we're doing. I want to say just a couple of words, therefore, on what our priorities are for the next year. Our priority is to meet the various timelines that are necessary to achieve the financial settlement with the proponent, having earlier chosen a proponent. That's our number one priority. And while achieving milestones might not sound like an exciting goal, it is critical to the success of the project, and a lot of our energies, including mine, are devoted to exactly that. And secondly, our priority is, as we do that work, to communicate to our partners what we are doing, to communicate to our partners the importance of the project so that we get even more support for the project. Having said that, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let's take a few moments to watch our video that demonstrates the tremendous momentum already underway. Thank you very much.
It will be an iconic bridge, an iconic structure. It will be a credit to both sides of the border, and it will do what we need it to do.
Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, WDBA, is a Canadian Crown corporation responsible for the delivery of the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. WDBA will manage the procurement process for the design, build, financing, operation, and maintenance of the new bridge between Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan through a public-private partnership. The Gordie Howe International Bridge project is a once-in-a-generation undertaking. The new bridge will deliver much-needed transportation improvements by providing redundancy, improved border processing, capacity, and improved system connectivity. The project will also provide jobs and opportunities for growth to the Windsor-Detroit region. There are 4 components to the Gordie Howe International Bridge project.
The deal that we worked out for 36 vacant parcels of land, you saw a celebration in the Delray community who hosted the announcement.
And so this really solves a lot of great issues for tourism and allowing us to explore both sides, because, you know, for those of us in Detroit who want to go on a bike ride in the country, the nearest place to go is actually Canada. So I'm really thankful for everyone for making this decision today and moving forward on this.
This is going to be a destination for cyclists. So it's a tremendous economic vision for our community. And I would like to thank the WDBA for your vision in making this happen.
And this is the biggest single project, infrastructure project in Canada. It is of tremendous importance to us.
If I could just add, both Governor Snyder and Mayor Duggan have been tremendously supportive of this effort, and I am quite certain, along with local representatives in the State House, as well as members of Detroit City Council, that there will be lots of opportunity.
Firmly committed to the Gordie Howe International Bridge. The President and I have both reiterated our strong support for the construction of this project.
Thank you. Now let me introduce today's final speaker, Ms. Linda Hurdle, our Chief Financial Administrative Officer, to present WDBA's 2016-17 financial reports.
Thank you, Heather. Good afternoon, bonjour. I'm pleased to be here today to present the WDBA's financial statements for the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2017. The financial statements are contained in our annual report and have been prepared in accordance with the Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards and are audited by the Office of the Auditor General of Canada. Our annual report, along with the financial statements, was tabled in Parliament in August 2017. Fiscal year 2016-2017 was the third year of operation for WDBA. During the year, WDBA made significant progress on our 4 key activities, which have been mentioned by both the chair of our board and our COO. Mainly, the activities were around the P3 procurement process, the U.S. property acquisition, the preparatory activities on the Canadian side, as well as utility relocation in both Canada and the U.S. To support these activities, WDBA received $354 million in appropriation during the year, and those funds were used, as mentioned earlier, to support our key activities. Our annual report contains further details as to our financial activities during the year and can be found on our website at wdbridge.com. If you would like any further information, you are welcome to contact us.
With the question and answer session of our annual public meeting. As a reminder, when you came in today, you were given a comment card. We ask that you write your question down on the card and you can hand it up, and a WDBA staff person will come and collect it and bring it to the front for us to read it. When we get to your question, when we read it and we respond to it, the person who asked the question does have an opportunity to ask an additional question if further clarification is needed. So on your behalf, I will ask a few of the additional questions that we have received since we've been here, and a few that came in, and direct these to our chair, our COO, and our CFAO. So first question, what are the risks, if any, if the private sector partner backs away from this project due to another bridge taking away tolls that will pay them first for their work before Canada gets paid back, and then Canada and US split the tolls? So what are the risks if the private sector backs off because of payment?
Marta, I may have to turn to you and Andre, but I'll start by saying that that's what, essentially what we're doing now is we are, our time is spending on getting an agreement with a single proponent who will design, build, and operate, finance, design, build, and operate the new crossing. Canada and Michigan will own the new crossing. The tolls will accrue to the WDBA, and then we will keep all of those to allow Michigan to pay back the financing costs that we have provided. Within that agreement, there are financial obligations that the successful proponent has. They have to bond their work, a number of other provisions. There are 3 consortia that are involved in the bidding right now. They have members of their consortia come from literally all over the world. There are Canadian leads in each one of them. They do business around the world, most of them. Each of them report to us that there are over 700 people working on their proposals. We have had, Linda, how many commercially confidential meetings?
I think about 56.
56 commercially confidential meetings, 3,000-page document, and we will be down to 1 proponent in May. And then from May through till September, we will negotiate financial close with that proponent. There are provisions, Marta, I believe, within the RFP that if somebody doesn't fulfill their obligations, we can move off of them. Over the life of an agreement, we have seen this right here in Windsor. We had, until 1989, private operation of the Windsor-Detroit Auto Tunnel as a good example. Typically, what will happen is the proponent will be selected based on a number of criteria. And again, they all have extensive financial backing, engineering, technical backing, and have done projects like this literally around the world. So there is really, I don't want to say no risk, but it would be very minimal. Here in Canada, we have done well in excess of 300 major P3 projects across the country. We've done them in, I think now in virtually every province. Interestingly, curiously enough, the Americans have not done as many of these proportionally as we do here in Canada. The UK has been a leader in this area as of other jurisdictions. So there are a range of protections both for the taxpayer and for the Canadian government, for the state of Michigan, as we move forward into construction and ultimately operation as well.
This question was asked by Jerry Gervais. Mr. Gervais, do you have a follow-up question? No? Thank you. Any more? So I'll move to a couple questions that we received in advance. Is there any way that the WDBA can assist in preserving the Ojibwe Shores property on the river in its natural state?
Andre?
This question comes up usually under the heading of the community benefits part of the work. Each of the 3 proponents will be coming forward with community benefit proposals after having received from us the ideas we've gotten from the community. And the intent is that these benefits have to do with jobs and training and with infrastructure in the areas affected by the bridge. And that's the positive side of the answer. Therefore, it is not in the mandate of the community benefits package to cover the proposal that's been raised in the question.
I would add further to that, if you don't mind. We do understand that there's a number of different approaches and proposals that are being discussed in the community, and we are interested in hearing how WDBA may be able to be involved in some of those discussions and be able to see what our role could be in those ongoing discussions. Mr. Henderson, do you have a follow-up question to that? No, thank you. Okay, all right. Another question that came in, what are the security needs for construction sites? How would you submit a proposal for security services?
So the security services for the P3 will come part really as part of the P3 contract. The procurement looks for the procurement process looks for really all activities that will be part of the construction. So the proponents will have security teams and experts as part of their teams, and they will submit what is required in accordance with obviously our requirements as outlined in the P3 document.
And if I could add, we have received requests from service providers to be able to, who are interested in contacting our proponent teams to discuss future contracting opportunities. If you're looking for that contact information, please email us at info@wdbridge.com and we can provide that information to you. This question was asked by Matt Bremner. Mr. Bremner, do you have a follow-up question? You are? No, okay. Okay, next question. I'm inquiring to see if there are drawings available to the general public that define the pier locations and clearance height for the proposed approach and the main span bridge that the bidding contractors must adhere to in their bids. I can answer that if you'd like. Okay. WDBA has made available the conceptual illustrations for the two bridge options that we have, which are cable stay and suspension. Quite a bit of our materials are confidential due to where we're at in our procurement process. We do have some general stats about the bridge spans that we were able to get from our engineering team in advance to respond to this question. The height of the bridge approach in both Canada and the US is estimated to be approximately 26 meters or 85 feet to 28 meters or 92 feet. The height of the bridge deck will be approximately 150 feet or 45 meters from the surface of the water. We also have the clearance height of the ramps in the US start from below grade for vehicles exiting I-75, and they very quickly elevate to a maximum of 13 meters or 44 feet to about 14 meters and or 46 feet to street level prior to descending back into the US port of entry. So that's from the Interstate 75. That question was from Barry Barger. I'm not sure if he's with us today. No? Okay, so no follow-up. More questions? So another question that came in advance. In constructing the Right Honourable Herb Gray Parkway, the provincial government provided compensating land for significant natural areas covered over by the parkway. What compensating lands will the Bridge Authority provide for land covered by the bridge and bridge plaza? And I can handle that one as well. Again, this question did come in advance, so we were able to talk to our environmental team to be able to prepare the response. What's important to note is the Parkway project and the bridge project are two separate and distinct projects. The land on which the Canadian port of entry is being constructed was developed before. It was built on land with a subdivision and industrial uses being on that land. And therefore, our environmental assessment approvals did not require us and do not require us to do the same type of land compensation that was required on the Right Honourable Herb Gray Parkway. That doesn't mean, however, that we're not fulfilling a number of environmental obligations and mitigation measures. I can give you an example of that being the Broadway drain, which you did see in the video that we just showed. That was a mitigation measure to compensate for impacted fish habitat. We also have a robust environmental management program that we're fulfilling, and we do actively mitigate impacts to species at risk on the site. Okay, let's see one more. Are there, oh, sorry. Yes.
In constructing the Herb Gray Parkway, they've taken a total environmental ecosystem approach to the construction, and they have provided 70 hectares of land inside the parkway as compensating land, and a further 60 hectares outside of the parkway corridor. It seems to me that the bridge and the plaza are going
Next question. Are there any decisions made with regards to the dollars that will be allocated to community benefits, and who will make the final decision as to where the dollars will be spent? Want me to answer that too? Okay. I'll give a preliminary answer, and then if there's additional comments. So the way in which we are developing the community benefits plan, the community benefits plan is a requirement for this project. It's a requirement set out in the crossing agreement signed between Canada and Michigan in 2012. We have been consulting with members of the public since about 2015 to get ideas and suggestions on what they'd like to see in a community benefits plan. Through that consultation, we've received about 200 ideas and suggestions to date, and I believe some more will be coming next week. What we are doing is providing all of those ideas and suggestions to our 3 proponent teams. They're currently working on their community benefits plans as part of their technical submissions that they will be submitting to us around May of next year. We will be evaluating those plans just like we evaluate any other technical aspect of this project, and they are required to meet some of the regional priorities that we've heard through those consultations that we've heard to date. So ultimately, the plans that we're going to be getting from those proponents reflect all of the consultation that we've done through the regional priorities that we've identified, and will reflect the community input that's been given to date. The incorporation of community benefit the incorporation of community input, as well as the ongoing engagement of communities is a requirement in the crossing agreement, and those are requirements that we fully intend to deliver on. Do you have a follow-up question, Marianne? I'd say the dollar amount is still part of the procurement process, and is something that we're continuing to work through the procurement process. Isn't something that we can share at this time. We will be able to share the full community benefits plan after we reach financial close, and as I stated, it will be a reflection of the input that we've received to date. Okay. This question, is the video we just watched available for public access, available online? Today was the premiere of that video. I hope you all enjoyed it. And following today's meeting, it will be available on our website and on our various social media sites. That was from Larry St. Antoine. Mr. St. Antoine, do you have a follow-up question? Okay. That's all right. It's all right. I'm used to it, Kieran. That's okay. With respect to active transport infrastructure on the actual crossing, Canadian and U.S. plazas, is there a plan in place to connect directly into the municipal active transport networks in Windsor and Detroit? I can answer that as well. Do you want me to?
Well, I can. Go ahead, Heather.
Okay. That's an item that we hear quite a bit, and it is something that has come through for a number of suggestions as part of our community benefits plans and considerations, and certainly through discussions that have been led both by the chair and our COO with the mayors of Windsor and Detroit. We have flagged that as something that we're interested in having ongoing dialogue on.
wishes for complete streets or connectivity. So that system of bike paths that they're going to have in and around the plaza. Similarly, on the Canadian side, our connections, we're going to have trails and bike paths on the perimeter access road and into Sandwich Town. So all of that, we're looking at it from a network perspective that we do connect them.
Kieran, do you have a follow-up question to that? No? Okay. Are there any more questions out there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Alan Halberstadt, representing Bizak Magazine. My question was with regard to traffic and traffic
take that?
Yes, please.
I looked at a picture of the Ambassador Bridge that was taken when it opened in 1929. And essentially you could shoot a cannon down that bridge. So number one, there have been extensive traffic studies done. Typically what they've done historically is they've gone like this. There have been dips, but trending upward. The estimated lifespan of the new bridge will be in excess of 100 years. And I would suggest to you if the need for 12 lanes at this border crossing, both for redundancy as well as accommodation, if they're not needed, we're going to have much bigger problems than the need of a bridge. The wait times and the times to act for connectivity between businesses have decreased. We will be releasing very soon some in-depth study that have been done from about where the trucks come from that will use this bridge, where they go, the amount of time it takes to get from point A to point B, the jobs that are at risk, the opportunities that have been lost to other border crossings where there's no additional capacity because the existing border crossing is so poorly run, is effectively down, I think most days I see it, 1 to 2 lanes, on 1 lane in each direction on any given day. So I would be careful because I've seen a lot of written stuff that takes numbers out of context, has no future view, and just seems to parrot the Ambassador Bridge. The DRIC study was extensive. It was an environmental assessment, huge, involving 4 governments. We've had, what are the numbers? We've had 3 presidents of the United States, 5 prime ministers of Canada, 4 governors of Michigan, 5 premiers of Ontario, Democrat, Republican, Liberal, Conservative, and the project continues on. I would suggest that the numbers that we have put out for full public scrutiny that have been challenged by the Ambassador Bridge and others, I would hope that perhaps we could have a more complete debate that doesn't just look at those narrow numbers. I would suggest that the full planning that took more than 20 years, I shouldn't say more than 20 years, officially probably about 15, bears out that, you know, by about the second day the new bridge is operating, we'll realize that, thank goodness we have this, the border moves more efficiently, business is more efficient. We didn't have just-in-time inventory in 1929. And I'm looking forward, we engaged last year the Cross-Border Institute here at the University of Windsor, working with Michigan State University. We saw a preview of their work, which will be, I'm not sure when it'll be public, but it'll be not too far off. Plus there have been extensive updates, as I understand it, done to the traffic counts and so on. I would just advise great caution in how you interpret those numbers. I would suggest that experts like the Cross-Border Institute be consulted, people who really actually work in the area, do the work, and have another look at the DRIC studies as well. There are lots of challenges in the economy. We had another incident not long ago where the trucks were backed up way past, was it Howard? I can't remember, but so there are a lot of reasons for moving ahead, and the traffic volume counts have been, I think, misrepresented by a lot of people in print and elsewhere, and subject to what I would call incomplete analysis. And we will be adding to that discussion very shortly.
Can I just, excuse me, can I just add one point that supports what the chair just said? Another element of the analysis that is useful to think about is that lanes are not just lanes. Lanes can have different functions. Some can be specialized for some purposes. And so more lanes allows much more flexibility in the management of different kinds of traffic. So a lane is not a lane. Different lanes have different functions. Useful to keep that in mind as one looks more carefully at the kinds of numbers that Chair was talking about.
Follow up? Yeah.
We've heard all along it's going to be 30 years of toll taking to pay this off. Number one, we don't know, and it doesn't surprise today, how much this project is going to cost. I've heard anywhere from $4 to $5 billion. Have you done, I'm assuming you've done the studies
So what we've said repeatedly, repeatedly, we can answer these in Scrum after as well, and I've said, and I'll say it again, we won't have an accurate picture until we actually have a successful proponent with how much everything costs. I can tell you that, and it's the numbers that have been made public, there's all kinds of risk factors involved. The biggest risk factor, frankly, is the value of the US dollar in terms of construction, correct? Interest rates are a factor. In the payback period, a whole range of things. To assume that it's not going to pay for itself is wrong. I mean, we've got the largest private consortia in the world working on this, contractual obligations that will have to be entered into, and ultimately there will be, because the bridge is going to be paid for by tolls, so ultimately there will be tolls. And there will be Marta, correct me if I'm wrong, but within the operating agreement there will be conditions around how tolls can be adjusted. The WDBA will retain that ultimate authority. And so we'll be in a better position at financial close sometime around next September to have a better sense of what those costs will be. But remember, even the Canadian dollar has gone up and down almost 20% in the last 3 years alone. And so that will affect a whole bunch of things. So once we have a better picture, and that won't occur until we have the actual successful proponent and financial close, then we'll be in a better position. But then those numbers will change yet again because conditions will change. There will be a whole range of things. What I can tell you is if you don't do this, the economic cost to this community, to our country, to our province, to the state of Michigan will be enormous. And so I would advise that people be fully informed, and we won't be fully informed until we have the financial close, number one, and then number two, again, things like the value of the US dollar, other things can change, the financing structure can change, a whole variety of things. We're going to do press questions afterwards, Dave.
One final question from the public.
I know.
Final question. WDBA website indicates that several species at risk, plants and snakes, were translocated from the Canadian port of entry during early works. How many hectares on site were considered species at risk habitat? Would you like me to take that? Okay. In terms of this, so the entire site is swept for species at risk. So when we started our early works, it wasn't just specific areas of the entire port of entry that we looked at. It was the entire, the full amount of the hectares were searched for plant species at risk and snake species at risk. So it wasn't one specific area that was a habitat, and we continue to do that species at risk work and the sweeps every day before construction begins. We do have species at risk monitors who are on site. If a species at risk is found, they're immediately notified, work stops, the species at risk is cleared from the site. So it really is an ongoing effort, and it's not just specific sites that were looked at. That question was asked by Jonathan Choquette. Mr. Choquette, do you have a follow-up question? Okay. So with that, that was the last question that we had. So on behalf of WDBA, I do want to thank all of you for your interest in the organization and for joining us here today. For those of you joining us by webcast or on our live feed on Facebook, we will now be ending that feed. And for those of you who have joined us in person, we do have some refreshments out in the promenade that we invite you to partake in. We will be asking